I'm Samuel Flores.
And I'm Arwen Struthers, and we are so thrilled to have you all here tonight. We've got some wonderful speakers lined up for you. And to really kick us off, we have the Department Chair for the Communication Arts Department, Dr. Christine Gardner.
Thank you, Arwen and Sam, and thanks to everyone for coming out tonight. As I said, I'm Christy Gardner. I'm the Associate Professor and Chair of Communication Arts here at Gordon. And welcome to the Adoniram Judson Gordon Memorial Speech Competition, AKA the JUD Talks. This is our second year of doing this, and I've heard these speeches. I have to tell you, you're in for a treat tonight. Some fascinating topics, really great speakers. They've been working hard and are ready for an audience. So thank you for being here tonight. In a bit, we're going to meet our judges, but before that, we need to meet the 6 finalists.
Hi, my name is Sarah Petrillo. I did the JUD Talks last year. They sent out an email that said, say words and win money, and I thought, I could do that.
My name is Mike Mckee, and I am from Highlands Ranch, Colorado, which is south of Denver in the metro area. I love backpacking, rock climbing, and I love trail running. I ran cross country in high school, and I run for cross country here at Gordon. A fun, interesting fact about me is that I am fluent in Spanish and that I have traveled all over Central America in my many years. My goals are to become a doctor. I want to do a PhD MD program. My interest is like cancer research, particular in oncology and pancreatic stuff.
My name is Amori Brian Gutierrez, and I am from Garfield, New Jersey. Well, I started swing dancing as soon as I got here at Gordon. I've never danced before, but I remember one time I was at a wedding and there's these 2 people who were really going at it. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. And upon seeing that, I just said, I want to do that. I love education. I love taking exams. I love taking quizzes. I love doing homework and all that stuff. People think I'm a maniac for enjoying that. It's like enjoying pain, but I do enjoy the pain. It's so much fun learning new concepts and all the beauty of this knowledge. I'm fascinated by it.
My name's Jess. I grew up in Silverdale, Washington. I went to high school in Virginia though, so I moved here from Virginia, but I feel most at home here, probably. I think my biggest involvement on campus is that I'm the creative director for Exit 17 Live. Hobbies are difficult. I feel like busy people, it's hard to have hobbies. So I think I used to have a hobby of painting, which I still try to do. I was in marching band for 5 years. My last 2 years, I was the drum major, which some people think that means playing the drums. I did not play the drums. That means I conducted. I was the conductor. This is right before we won 2nd place. I didn't know it yet, but we had already won, but I didn't know it yet.
My name is Robert Mick, and I'm from Woburn, Massachusetts, originally from Augusta, Maine. I'm studying physics, and it's great. So I love physics just because of how fundamental it all is. I mean, it just gets right to the heart of the phenomena that we see in nature, and it explains it in its simplest terms. I like to play a lot of music on campus. I play with gospel choir, with jazz ensemble, singing, college choir with Dr. Hillman, the man. So fun fact, and it's up to you to determine whether or not this is actually fun. I have an Elmo voice, and Elmo, when are the children to come to JUD Talks and learn?
I'm Aidan Conant. I'm from East Kingston, New Hampshire. I'm a double major in communication arts and Spanish. So something I really like to do at Gordon is I'm a co-leader of Kavana, which is the band that primarily plays at Evening Chapel. And it's just a bunch of fun playing guitar for them and really neat experience. So fun fact, I actually almost went to Endicott right before I chose to come to Gordon for criminal justice, but then God really had a way of kind of working it out and changing my mind a little bit so I could come here and grow my faith. And now I'm not at Endicott, so I'm happy, happy for that.
My name is Selena Gustin, and I'm from Everett, Massachusetts. I'm a Christian Ministries and Psychology double major with a concentration in juvenile justice. So I guess you already saw, but I love to cook. I love hanging out with my friends, watching movies. I love to travel. So that's like a big thing. Goal of mine is to visit all 50 states. I've gotten to 12. So I'm like partway there, and that's like really great. I love anything artistic, and I love to have fun. A little unknown fact about me is that I actually published a book at 14. Pray for me because I'm graduating, so need a job out here, but that's it.
And now it's time to introduce our judges.
So our first judge of the night is Geoff Arthur, and he is just down the road at Gordon Conwell. He's a professor in preaching and communication, so he is preparing the next generation of public speakers. So Geoff.
And next we have Noelle Guerin. She's an alumna of Gordon College, class of 02. She is a marketing professional. She's marketed for brands you know, Ocean Spray, General Motors. She also competed in speech herself. Give up a hand for Noelle.
And finally, we have Maggie Riesma, who is a recent Gordon College graduate from 2017. She was in the Communication Arts Department, so we're so grateful to have her back with us tonight.
And now we have our first speaker, Aidan Conant. He lives just down the hall from me in Ryder Hall. He's one of the best guitar players I've ever met, and he's going to give us a quick speech today.
Question for you guys. How would you feel if you attended a lecture or went to a sermon at church and the speaker or the lecturer decided to start at the top of the auditorium? Instead of seeing your wonderful faces, the person talking and speaking is able to see every single thing you are doing in your hands. I think this has become a little bit of a problem in chapel because I think a lot of people have been starting to use cell phones. So how would you feel if Tom Haugen was walking down, the chapel aisle and able to see everybody who's on their computers and cell phones? This is what prompted this slide. As some people might know, for those of you who don't know, this is a slide that's very commonly seen during our chapel gatherings, whether it be morning chapel or evening chapel, saying, we encourage you to put away your phones, laptops, and tablets so that you may fully engage with this morning's chapel gatherings to avoid distracting those around you. Thank you. Yeah, I think this is a very interesting point. What has led to the point that our chapel office has needed to put a slide in front of every single morning gathering or evening gathering to tell us, hey guys, please get off your phones. Now, phones have become something that are super powerful and very, very useful in our generations, right? I can listen to any song I want to. I can email any person I want to. I have the ability to communicate with the person, all the way across the world, if I want to, for some reason, the person literally standing right next to me. But at the same time, I think they're becoming sort of a problem in our lives, and they're really starting to distract us. As we all know, texting and driving rates have really gone through the roof over the past couple of years. For me, even though it's not a car, it was a golf cart accident. I was working at a golf course my freshman year, and my boss said, hey, Aidan, go home. You don't need to, wait around. You can just head home. So I was, freshman me, all excited, got on my golf cart. I was driving through the golf course. I whipped out my flip phone. And, I couldn't drive, so I was texting my mom. And my left wheels of the golf cart slipped off the side of a little bit of a hill. And I started to skid down and kind of go out of control a little bit and slammed in between these two trees. I tried for a couple minutes to jerk it out, and I got really scared, and I ran away. and I didn't tell my boss what happened. I kind of lied to him, but that's besides the point. The point is, cell phones are really starting to distract us, right? And I think it's really important that before these phones start to conquer us, we need to learn how to conquer them. To prove this point a little bit more, there was a study done by Western Washington University on the streets of Chicago. What they did is on a sidewalk, there's a tree right in the middle. And they had a couple people observing, and they were videotaping the people walking by. On the tree, they put on and taped about $101 bills, with each dollar bill saying, hey, please take it if you find this, to see who would actually notice that there's money literally on a tree, growing on a tree, and who would take this opportunity. So what they noticed, specifically with the people who were on their cell phones, is as the people walked by, they were looking down at their cell phones and didn't even notice the opportunity to grab a buck or two without any price. What's shocking is that this wasn't just a handful of people. 94% of the people looking down at their phones did not notice the opportunity right in front of their eyes to grab this cash, which I think that's a really big number, right? You would think, if a dollar bill hits me in the face, I'd grab it, but no, 94% of these people missed this opportunity because they were so engrossed in what was going on in their phones. Yet, we always think of these phones in our hands as they're only distracting me. It's only me that's really being pulled into the world. It's my choice, right? Whether I'm going to distract myself or not. Well, a study that was done and posted in the Journal for Consumer Research states that that's not always the case. What they did is they had 3 groups that did the same work problem, same task. One group had their phones directly next to them on their desk. No notifications were on, so that's one group. Group 2, however, had their phones tucked in their bags, right next to them still, but a little bit more put away, versus Group 3 had their phones in a completely different room, not even in sight. And as you can see by these statistics, the people with their phones in the completely other room did significantly better than those with their phones in their pockets or right next to them. And again, as I said, notifications weren't even on. They were told not to use their phones. It was just the mere presence of that cell phone that distracted them. So yes, we have this phone in our hands, and it's our choice whether we're going to distract ourselves. But I think what we don't notice is that our phones are starting to distract those around us, right? Which is, I think, is something that we don't always think about. I'm on my phone doing my own thing, but yet the person behind me might also be looking at what I'm doing on my phone. This brings me back to the chapel slide. As we can see, we encourage you to put away your phones, tablets, and laptops to avoid distracting those around you. There's a purpose for putting that last little line of avoiding distracting those around you, because it's very easy to look on over the shoulder of the person in front of you or to your right. This brings me to this quote by Andrew Sullivan, who's an American author who wrote My Distraction, Sickness, and Yours. He says, "We all understand the joys of our always wired world, the connections, the validations, the laughs, the info, but we are only beginning to get our minds around the costs, if we are even prepared to accept that there are costs." So let me bring you around to a chapel story. One evening chapel my freshman year, they did something called the Stations of the Cross. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, they had stations all around the chapel that kind of walked you through kind of the process that Jesus went through during his crucifixion. So at one point you wrote your sins on a sticky note and you put it against the wall, or you took a little thing of vinegar and you tasted the vinegar as if Jesus was drinking it, right? And then the next one was at the very top left of the chapel, and it was a cross. And then you had a hammer and a nail. And what they asked you to do is, hit your nail into the cross, signifying that it's our sins that killed Jesus. It's our sins, it's our problems that murdered Jesus on that cross. That's what they were trying to, go at. So after that was weighing on me a little bit, I stood up and I turned around to walk back down the aisle towards the front of the chapel. And what do I see but a dozen screens lighting up people's faces all across the chapel. And it really just tore me up, I just had this, really deep moment within myself of, yeah, my sins killed Jesus, guys. And nobody cares. I'm walking down and okay, you're doing homework, you're on your email, you're playing a game for some reason. Well, our band is leading us in wonderful praise to God. This comes as no surprise to us, I think, that cell phones are beginning to distract us. I hope that these statistics are a little bit of alarming to you. But what are we going to do about this? To quote Sherry Turkle, who is an MIT professor of social studies and science and technology, she says, "We miss out on necessary conversations when we divide our attention between people, the people we're with, in the world of our own phones. Or when we go to our phones instead of claiming quiet moments for ourselves." I think this leads into a little bit of what we're supposed to do. So, as everything nowadays is in 3 easy steps, right? I'm gonna give you guys 3 easy steps to get away from your phone. Ready for these? Now, you don't need to do these right now, but just keep these in mind for later, okay? When the rest of these wonderful people are giving their speeches. 1, I want you to take your cell phones. 2, just put them away. 3, enjoy and engage in everything that's going on around you. Again, from that study, 94% of the people miss that opportunity to claim free cash, but that's not the only opportunity we could be missing when we're on our phones. I encourage you guys to put away your phones. Enjoy what's going on around you. Engage. If there's nothing going on around you and you don't need to put on your phone, put it down still and look at God's creation, guys. We're filled by wonders of His majesty, and His creation is all around us, and we need to take that in. These cell phones, they're powerful, powerful tools, right? All the potential uses that we could have with them and every communication possibility. But again, it's important that we learn that we need to conquer these before they conquer us. Use them for good, and don't let them distract us from the things going on around you. Now to end, I want to end with a verse from Psalms. "Clap your hands, all you nations, shout to God with cries of joy." From Psalm 47:1. Now this is going to seem ironic, but I want you guys all to pull out your phones. Go ahead, pull them out, please. Don't worry, you're not going to be on them. I just need you to use them for a second. So as the verse says, "Clap your hands, all you nations, shout to God with cries of joy." I want you guys just to do that. Imagine we're in a chapel gathering or in church right now, and I want you guys to take your phones in your hands as you would normally hold them and start clapping for me. Go ahead. Okay, that's good. Okay, it's a little, okay. Now hear this difference. Now, go ahead, follow those 3 steps. Take your phone, put them away, and let's enjoy and engage with what's going on. If you're in chapel, I want you guys to give God the loudest praise and clap you can give Him right now, distraction-free. Simple. Can you hear the difference?
Thank you so much, Aidan. That was wonderful. Up next, we have Amori Brian Gutierrez. He actively is a member of the Swing Dance Club, and he's also a member of Island of Misfit Toys, which is one of the college's improv groups, and he's here to ask a really difficult question.
Why? W-H-Y ? 3 letters, 1 punctuation mark. Why? It's a small word, and it's one of the shortest sentences in the entire English language. And yet, it is the most important question you will ever ask in your entire life. The question why is a doorway that leads into a vast ocean of knowledge. And that knowledge will lead to more questions and even more knowledge. And all of it will constitute a beautiful cycle of curiosity and wonder. But perhaps you're having trouble seeing this ocean. Or perhaps you just don't want to swim in it. Well, allow me to be a sort of lighthouse. Allow me to shine on this ocean so that you can see that swimming in it can be one of the most gratifying things you will ever do in your entire life. So, let me use an example. Let me tell you about what I consider to be the most brilliant game ever invented by mankind. It is the most ingenious, thought-provoking game you will ever play. And it's played by children almost every single day. In fact, they're the ones who invented it. Now, I'm not entirely sure if it was given an official name, but I have come to call it the Y game. Now, I'm sure you've heard of it, but if by chance
you haven't been tortured by it or have had the pleasure of torturing someone else with it, then allow me to explain what it is. The why game is a game usually played by two people, typically children, and it starts with one person asking the other a very simple question. So let's say that little Tommy walks into his room and sees his older brother Billy sitting on his chair. Well, he can't do it, so he asks the question, well, why are you sitting in my chair? That's my chair. Well, it's just comfortable. Okay, but why? Well, it allows me to not use my legs. But why? Well, it has 4 legs of its own. Okay, but why? They keep the chair from falling. Why? That's how physics works. Why? I don't know, it just does. Leave me alone. Why? Is this annoying you? It annoys most people, but there is something that's quite fascinating about this game. Now, if you'll notice, most games tend to begin with a very small question and end with a very grand one. In our example, we began with, why are you sitting on that chair? And we ended with what was essentially, why are the laws of physics the way they are and not something else? We began with something so small as a chair and ended with something so grand as the laws of physics that govern our entire universe. That's magnificent. That's the beauty of the why game. With it, you can explore such grand concepts in an instant. And it has to deal with the nature of the question why. Because the question why asks for origin, reason, cause. And if you try to find the cause of, let's say, object A, and you find out that it's object B, well, that's all well and good. But what caused object B? Well, you might do some more investigating, find out that it's object C, of course. But what caused object C? And as you continue playing this game, you keep playing the why game, you realize that the question being asked expands rapidly because object C caused not only object B, but a host of other things as well. So then, what happens if you keep going? You keep going, you get to object D and E and F and so on, and as you continue, naturally, the questions expand at a rapid rate. So much so that it's not too long until you reach what I call the great big why question, which is simply this. Why are we here? What is the cause of everything? Now, ladies and gentlemen, we began with one question and one word. Why? We are now talking about the existence of God himself. I hope that you're starting to come to realize the importance of the question why. It's a powerful question. Through it, we receive not only knowledge, but meaning and purpose, who we are, how we ought to live. And yet, I find that we are no longer fond of this question. We are no longer a curious people. In our postmodern world, we simply just walk around not caring about much because we believe it doesn't really matter. We just go around just doing whatever it is we do. Everything's mundane. There doesn't seem to be any real purpose to anything. And when there's no purpose, the question why becomes obsolete because the question why deals with purpose. And when there is none, why bother? There's just no point. Well, if you ask me, that's a depressing way to live. In such a life, there is no creativity, there is no wonder, fascination, there's no brilliance. There's nothing there that can possibly sustain me. I cannot live the way that so many people are content with living. Even here at Gordon College, a place where we can study many, many things, we often view knowledge only as a means to an end rather than an end in and of itself. Oh, it gets us good grades, it gets us a degree, it'll get us a paycheck eventually one day, or so I hope. But is that really it? Are we really only here for a degree? Or are we here for something more? Could it be possible that instead of just being here for the material rewards, that we are also here for the spiritual ones? For the enlightenment that comes with the knowledge so that we can become better people, God's people. The current state of affairs worries me. It's extremely troubling. But I do have hope. I have hope because I know that there is still a collective group of people asking questions. And it's the very children that we've just talked about. So, allow me to ask you another question. If you had to estimate how many questions you ask in a day, what would you say? 20, 30, 40? That's a lot, right? Makes sense. That's a reasonable estimate. What if I told you that the average preschooler asks 100 questions every single day? The average 9-year-old boy, he's going to ask you 144. The average 4-year-old girl, she's going to ask you 390. Yeah, good for you, women, right? That's great. These little children, whom we often neglect, let's be honest, are the ones who understand fully the power of the question why. They're the ones who are asking it. They're the ones who are seeking answers. I believe that instead of them following in our footsteps, we ought to follow in theirs. So, if a child comes up to you and starts playing the why game, don't get annoyed. Don't. Instead, use it as an opportunity to swim in that ocean of knowledge, explore concepts together. Students, don't study just for a grade. Do it for something more, for the wisdom that you will receive, the enlightenment that will come. But if you're still unconvinced, if you still think it's not worth it, then allow me to ask you just one more question. Because there is a second thing that fascinates me about the why game. Because you see, it usually ends with something along the lines of, I don't know, it simply is what it is. That always fascinated me, because the why game, it can be seen as tracing the origins of everything. So you go through it, you get to the last origin, and you find out it simply is what it is. The last point. If that origin was a person, if that origin could talk, it would probably say, I am who I am. Which is exactly what God said to Moses in Exodus 3:14. Why is that?
Thank you so much, Amori. Up next, we have Jessma Banglo here to talk to us about something that's really important in all of our lives. And I've had the privilege of working with Jess for the past year and a half, and she is just a delight. So buckle up.
Compassion has been on my mind a lot lately. We've all heard this. Stories we've heard in the news, tragedies around the world, further political separation in recent years. We feel that we have reason to be angry at people or the world. And we hear compassion a lot in the Bible, that phrase, compassion. God telling us to have compassion towards others. I think, though, Christians see this as being nice to strangers or pitying the poor, those people that we don't know very well. But what about compassion in our immediate lives, like right here on campus? Compassion towards our brothers and sisters in Christ. Those people who we think, or maybe we want to be a lot alike, but because of our tiny differences that we have, sometimes with our faith, it really upsets us. And that being upset causes hurt. And then from that hurt, maybe feelings of deep betrayal. And then from there, we shun friends, and we ignore family. We kind of hold this stance that I don't think I can care for you and love for you in the way I did when you're acting like this. And so I've been thinking lately, okay, what does compassion really mean then? What does it really mean if it might mean more than what we think it is? Well, compassion does not equal pity. And it's used alongside pity and might be with similar themes as pity, but they are purposefully not the same word. I think that compassion goes beyond the stranger, and that we're called to have compassion right here on campus, right here at Gordon. I see compassion as forgiveness. Recently, I was able to travel with some students here at Gordon with Professor Swar, and we went to Sundance. And Sundance is arguably the biggest independent film festival in the world. And so lots of heavy topics come in the form of film. And one of the films that we saw was this 12-minute film called Dee Cobb Elementary about a potential school shooting that didn't happen, but could have. And the reason why it didn't happen was because of the receptionist that was in the school at the time, and she was actually covering for another woman at the time, and this is a true story. The man walks in with a gun, and she's terrified. And he pretty upfront says that he's not mentally stable, and she kind of sees that and says, "Tell me more," and is able to calm him down. And he says, maybe I just want to die. And she says, "No, you don't want to die." And she recalls something that happened with her husband in years prior, and she says, "I've been there. I've been in a dark place like that. Believe me, you don't want to die." And he says, "Well, maybe I don't feel like I have any friends." And she says, "I'm standing right here, and I'm talking to you." And remember, there's a gun between them in this moment. There's not even a desk between them right now. And she says, "I'm right here. I'm here to talk to you." And throughout the film, which is a 12-minute film, she's able to calm him down. And he hands the gun over to her, and he actually decides to turn himself into the police. And so there's this shot where he's laying on the ground with his hands behind his back, just waiting for the police to come in. And she's just staring at him, sitting in this chair. And she says, "I don't even know your name, but I want you to know that I'm proud of you, and what you're doing is the right thing, and that I love you." She has every reason to be terrified of this man, angry at him for what he's about to do to all the students in the school, but she doesn't. She's able to see herself in him, the tiniest little thing that makes them connect, and have compassion on them, and then is able to forgive them. This is compassion as a means of forgiveness. And I'm sure you've all seen this verse before, that we should be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as Christ God forgave us. Every day, every minute, we're receiving grace that we do not deserve from God. Shouldn't we be doing that for others? I also see compassion as unity. These are some photos from last Thanksgiving when the University of Washington was on its way to Pullman to play the big Apple Cup game against their rivals, Washington State University. On the highway, the bus flips, and 47 of those band members get sent to the hospital with injuries, and of course, they don't show up in Pullman to play at that game. When the rival band, Washington State, hears the news of what happened to UW, they decide to very quickly learn UW's fight song, and they play UW's fight song instead of their own. Now, these are rivals, the biggest rivals in Washington State. They have been for years. They also have every reason to not extend a hand and show any kind of care towards these people. But they find common ground in that we're all students, and we're all just here to watch football, but this is real life, and we're going to choose to have compassion on what has happened to you. This is compassion as unity. Another verse that kind of connects to this is, "Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, any tenderness of compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, in one spirit and in one mind." God greatly, badly wants us to be united, and we can do this through compassion. And I think if the church strives just a little bit harder to see the common ground between one another, we're going to find it if we look hard enough. And it's there, I promise you. And finally, if anything from this speech, compassion is 100% love. This is a story of a couple. It was actually just this past weekend, last Sunday, and they're telling of when they lost their daughter, a teenage daughter, 7 years ago, in that shooting during the Batman movie. It seems so long ago, but it happened in that movie theater. They felt extreme pain in that time and didn't want anybody else to feel alone in that moment, so they quit their jobs and they rented out their house so that they could afford to rent this trailer and drive all over the country to visit people who have been affected by shootings and tragedies, just these communities that are suffering. They go to synagogues, country club, I believe, other schools, places they've never been before, crying for people they have never met and they don't know, solely because they understand what it's like to lose someone they love. And the woman, the mother who's standing here, goes up to this man who's grieving over someone that was shot at a country club. And she says, "We don't know each other, but now we do." And the husband who's sitting next to her says, "Bottom line, that is compassion." And the thing about compassion is that we get something from it too. Compassion is not a one-way street. And I think that's what's different between compassion and pity, is that compassion is something happening between two people. They get something from being able to care for other people. Isn't that the whole point of living with other people on earth? This is compassion as a means of love. And from this last verse, he will have compassion according to his abundance of love, according to his love. Everything that God does for us is because he loves us. The compassion he has for us is because of he loves us. And shouldn't we be following that same principle that if God is doing this for us, shouldn't we be doing this for other people? Through these stories we've heard, I don't know your name, but I'm proud of you and I love you. Or we're enemies, but we're going to cheer for you. Or we don't know each other, but now we do. All of these are compassion. And the crazy thing about this is that none of these are Christian. None of these people are Christian, or at least that's not the point of the stories. This is not Christian affiliated, it's not faith or church affiliated at all. If these people in the world are able to extend compassion to people they don't know, strangers, why is it so hard for us to have compassion towards those in our immediate lives here at school? Compassion towards our classmates that we're arguing with, roommates that we have issue with, those coworkers, club members, I know how clubs can get, friends, even teachers sometimes. It's so easy to say, I'm not even going to go there with you. Right? I'm going to stand over here and I'm going to look at you the way that I'm always going to see you from now on, and that's that. We can do that. I've done that with people. I still am doing that with people in my life. But God's saying, go there with them. Have compassion on them. Because guess what? Newsflash, you are just as undeserving as my love as they are. And so I can't say that I'm not capable of traumatizing hurt, because I am. And I can't say that I'm not capable or that I have bad moments, because I certainly do. I think in these stories and in these verses, God's telling us to please try to see yourself in your enemy, see yourself in others, and have compassion on them so that you might be able to forgive them, be united by them, and ultimately to love them. And Gordon, I think we've missed so many opportunities to have compassion on other people. We've missed the chance to take a step back, or maybe I should say take a step down and belittle ourselves in the eyes of God. We don't deserve any love. Without Jesus, we are literally nothing. We deserve no love at all, but he gives it to us anyway. So we should be giving love to people anyway and have compassion for those people. Messy compassion, hard compassion, heavy compassion. But it's heavenly compassion too. As Christians, we must have compassion towards one another. We have to. And you can't love God and hate people. It just doesn't work like that. I would challenge you guys for the rest of this semester to have compassion towards other people, especially when you really don't want to, or times when you didn't even think it would make sense to have compassion then. It probably does. Have compassion towards one another around you, especially at the time of this year when it's the end of the semester and finals are coming up. Maybe you're stressed out for events, graduating, just the end of the year in general. Have compassion towards those around you. Really try to see yourself in the other person. I need to do that better. I need to see myself in my enemies, because I would hope that they might have compassion on me too. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess. I think that was really important to hear. Next up, we have Mike Mckee. As mentioned in the video, he runs track. When I was talking with him earlier, discovered he's also a meme connoisseur. I also discovered he and I have a shared background. We both competed in debate in high school, and I think that's a bit of an inspiration for what he's going to be talking about with us today.
Good evening, Gordon College. Now, what you're seeing on the screen is correct. So you can stop shifting nervously in your seats to make sure your glasses are on right. No, I'm here to talk to you that the sky is purple. Now let me tell you why. The sky is purple because as the sun irradiates the oxygen molecules, they get excited, right? And they like to jump and shoot off these little electrons that then, as we understand from high school physics, irradiate light waves. And as those light waves go from purple to blue, or less high energy to low energy, we perceive them as blue. Who here believes me? Right, you shouldn't. You're wrong. I'm very wrong. That's just bunk science, right? And there's a but. The real question you should be asking yourself is not, do you believe me, but would you have corrected me? See, we're not actually here to talk about if the sky is purple. We're here to talk about argumentation. And that big, scary, pretentious definition on the board is Oxford Dictionary's definition, which defines argumentation as the process of reasoning systematically in support of an idea, action, or theory. Now, it's really big and intimidating, so let's break it down into a few smaller parts so we can kind of digest it better. First, we have the idea of a process. This means that it is both passive and active. I'm not just going to yell at you and tell you exactly why the Colorado Avalanche is the best team in the NHL objectively, but I'm also going to listen and hear your case, even though I think it's invalid. It's a give and a take. You can't just present, you have to listen. The next term is reasoning. And I think this can best be likened to, like, you know how a doctor doesn't show up to neurosurgery without his scalpel, like, did you bring yours? Sorry. Like, you always come prepared. And though I'm not saying you should come to every argument and every little scuffle you get into with your friends with this long, drawn-out JUD talk, as I am, but I think as it says on the screen, thinking before you speak is really important. It's going to save you a lot of embarrassment, and it's going to save me a lot of embarrassment, and it's ultimately going to help you to build something out of argument. As we'll see later, argument is that key towards building something. The last word is systematically. And this means that we have an order in discourse. Now, that's a fancy way of saying that we have a way in which we do things. It's not just me yelling at you why the Colorado Avalanche is the best, and you responding back at the same exact time, because that doesn't serve any purpose. It's a matter of recognizing that one person will speak, the other will think, and then respond. Okay? Now, once more, I have one other giant word that I'm thinking that kind of best describes this. It puts it into character. It's a very complicated word that you all have heard before. Respect. That's right. I think that argumentation is respect. And so, as we'll see, argumentation is important practically, in the world outside of Gordon, where we're going to after this place, religiously, as Christians, and then right here at Gordon College. And we have to understand that when we talk about argumentation, we're talking about respect towards building something. So now let's move into practically. Argument in the real world. We're going to take from two historical examples. First, we're going to look at how not to, because it's always fun to learn from others' mistakes. And then we're going to build up a case on how we should and why that matters. So, beginning with how we shouldn't. Come back in time with me. We're in Kansas in 1848, right? The House of Representatives. And there is a bill on the floor. This bill is discussing the legality of slave trade in Kansas, right? Now, mind you, this is 1848. So, it's a bit of a hot-button issue, 12 years before the Civil War. So, like any good representative, what do our fine leaders in the United States do? Well, in a moment that the Congressional Globe describes the instant the House was in the greatest possible confusion, which is fancy talk to, it was a kerfuffle. One man canes another, and a 100-man brawl breaks out. I'm not making this up, folks. That is real. Now, as much as fun as it is to poke fun at our leaders for doing something as insane as this, there's something else we can take from this. Two things, actually. The first is that we cannot allow violence to impede our ability to have discourse. You should never respond to someone's opinion, even if you don't like them, by hitting them in the head with a cane. That's typically not productive. And the second piece is we cannot allow our presuppositions about other people and about someone else in an argument to get in our way of being able to communicate effectively. You see, I guarantee you that they didn't at all address the bill that was on the floor that day. No. In fact, that won't be addressed for another 12 years in the Civil War. Don't let that get in the way. So now that we understand how we shouldn't, we're going to take from an example one of the greatest arguers in American history and perhaps one of the most amazing nonviolent protesters ever. Right? If you have taken an English class at Gordon, you'll recognize that that's Dr. Martin Luther King. And particularly when he writes in his letter from a Birmingham jail that in any nonviolent campaign, we have 4 basic steps. We're going to collect the facts, we're going to negotiate, we're going to self-purify, and then we're going to take direct action. So what Dr. King is saying here is that we have certain aspects of preparation before we go into an argument or into a case or before we do something. And why is this important? You're probably asking, okay, you're quoting Dr. King. Why do I have to bring in Dr. King when I'm arguing? Because argumentation is the way that we stand up to injustices and resist oppression right here in the status quo, right in the here and now. Outside of Gordon, when there's something you don't like politically, socially, economically, argumentation is how you effectively stand up for that and use your voice. When we thoughtfully engage with ideas that aren't our own and we don't agree with, we are essentially cooperating towards creating a brighter future. It's buying and selling ideas in what is known as the marketplace of ideas. So go out and invest. Next, we're going to look at this religiously. So argumentation is really fun when we talk about history. Now we're going to go a little deeper. In the common Christian community, it's very easy for us to say that, oh, he's a pastor, I shouldn't respond. He must be right. He's read the Bible. It was said in chapel. It's true. Right? Not the case. Christians today like to just take things at face value. We don't like to deal with Scripture. We don't like to argue with it. But I'm going to make the case that not only should we, but the Bible condones it. And we're going to take from the greatest arguers of Scripture and perhaps in history ever. That's right. I'm using the Gordon College answer. It's Jesus, folks. And we're going to look at a particular passage in Matthew chapter 22. Now, what's happening here is the Sadducees are trying to trap Jesus in sort of a logical fallacy here. They're going to try and discredit him as the rabbi and the Son of God that he says he is by pulling out some obscure piece of Scripture. If you're into irony here, it's a little bit funny that they're using the Word of God to try and discredit the Son of God. I found that funny. But what's important here is we have to look at how does Jesus respond? Does he just simply say, you guys are the Sadducees, you must be right? No. He says, you are so wrong. There's an exclamation point there. Christ goes out of his way to say that what they are saying is wrong. And we as Christians must address untruths with truth. Notice how Jesus goes on to say that surely you have read what God said and proceeds to build up truth with the Bible. We as Christians need to be willing to address dangerous theologies and dangerous philosophies that are corrupting the faith today with truth and with statements like this. Now, with that comes a warning. Do not use this as a weapon. In fact, Paul talks about this in James chapter 3. I apologize. The tongue is dangerous. Our words have power to them. He also says in 1 Corinthians that we cannot do anything without love. So when you go out and argue, Gordon College, make sure you do so in love. When you go out and argue with someone as to why Romans needs to be kept in the Bible, make sure you're doing so with the respect given as a fellow brother and sister in Christ. Because that's what it's all about. So now that we've talked religiously and practically, let's talk about it right here and now, Gordon College. This is for you guys. We hear this statement so often at every official Gordon gathering, preparing the people of God for the work of God, as our founder, A.J. Gordon says. And I'm going to submit to you that I think that argumentation on our campus is a summation of respect, of peace, of love, and of truth, of everything that we've been talking about. We are effectively achieving and getting to that point that A.J. Gordon wanted us to be at when we engage and think critically. So I'm asking you guys right now, the next time you're sitting down in Gillies and someone asks you a politically charged question or says a comment that has a blatantly racy or dicey tone to it, what are you going to do? Are you just going to ignore them, as so often we do? Push it to the side, act like it never happened, stop hanging out with them? Or are you going to argue? Are you going to not only stand up for what you believe, but possibly engage in learning something new? Because I'll tell you what I think A.J. Gordon wants us to do. He wants us to think and engage and grow each other. Because you never know. You might just find out that the sky is indeed purple. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. Up next, we have Wisleen Augustin. And Wisleen and I were actually in Israel together several months ago. And she is someone who's very curious and wants to engage with lots of different topics. So engage with her.
I guess I shouldn't be so rude, but do you ever get so lost in the music that the synchronized rhythms and beats just tickle your eardrums and your body just doesn't know what to do with itself? Do you ever have songs running through your head like all the time? A constant soundtrack playing over and over again, making your neurons dance. Let me explain to you what music actually does to your brain. So depending on the type of music, it can affect your mood and even how you perceive the world. When you listen to music, your brain releases neurotransmitters called dopamine, and with that, it's involved with tangible pleasures associated with rewards such as food. So why is it that we hear music in stores, coffee shops, and dare I say, even on the elevator? It's because our world is constantly playing a soundtrack. And to give you a picture of some of the songs in my own soundtrack, they look a little bit like this. And this. And even this. Music is the heartbeat of the universe. It can pop and lock and jab and break. One might even ask, is that legal? Is it legal that a decrescendo can cause a congregation to shout hallelujah? Is it legal that a dissonant note can cause raised hairs and goosebumps? Music would say, yes, my friend, because it has no bounds, it has no end. The way that we shape things musically, our physical frame echoes its beats. For you can hear it in the jungle where birds sing sweetly to one another, as it ripples over the sand, as waves crash onto the seashore. When you hear the roar of a whale as it rides along the ocean, music is the heartbeat. It is so deeply ingrained into our DNA. But it looks like you guys don't believe me yet, so let's try an exercise. I will hum a tune, and then you'll have to finish the phrase. Are you ready? Da na 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 na, da na na na. Yes, yes. Let's try one more. Da da na na na. Hey, look at that. You guys are great. See, you already knew those tunes because your brain is so in tune to music. I know another man where music was the heartbeat that pumped through his veins. A.J. Gordon, the founder of our wonderful school, was the piano man, and oh, did he sing us a song. He was so in tune to music that even a few chords would bring him downstairs to the side of the piano as if an invisible yet no less potent spell were working. You see, he could not escape it. Writing more than 15 hymns, A.J. Gordon had his way around the charts. People who know me well know that I am not a singer, like at all, but that I have my way around a pen and paper. I believe that A.J. Gordon's hymns are poems that are swayed to sweet, sweet melodies. And if I were to write a poem swayed to sweet melodies, it would look a little bit like this. I can hear the bells. Do you hear it? Walking down streets of broken glass, glass reflects back, back is on the ground, ground is swallowed whole, and the whole is no more. I hear a mother's cry, a sister's plea, a brother's fist in the wall. How can this be? Not again. Is there no end to this catastrophe? Or is it treated with a pat on the back and given a thanks for participating trophy? Young boys and young girls reflect me, look back at you, wondering, hoping, praying that they are seen. Are they? Do you see them? Do you see me? Because who I am is inextricably bound into who you are. You may not know my name, where I come from, or even what my background is, but know this. that the loss of me equals the loss of you. Pretty cool, right? Now put that over a sick beat and you have a song, ladies and gentlemen. Out of all the hymns that A.J. Gordon had created, there was one that resonated with the masses. My Jesus, I Love Thee. Published in over 900 hymnals, translated in over 8 different languages, sung by thousands of people, has 17 different scriptural references. Wow, this song has an echo that reverberates over 100 years. And I think that if he and I collaborated, it would look a little bit like this. My Jesus, my Jesus. Blood spilled at the foot of Calvary, my blood. Our blood. Every single drop. Would you have done it if you didn't love me? My life now belongs to you. From every waking moment to every last dying breath is all yours. Take it, for I will sing to the rooftops all the days of my life. For you see me, you see us, who we are, and your bell tolls for me, it always will. And on that cross, you took our place because you believed we were worth more than what we deserved. We sing heaven's praises, we exalt your name because we know no one else would have volunteered as tribute to take that shame. So in life and in death, if ever I love thee, my Jesus, it is now. In the same way that A.J. Gordon left us an amazing legacy, he also left us a song. What is the song that you are hoping to leave here at Gordon College? What are your biggest passions? What are your greatest dreams? What are the pieces of your life that you want to leave here? What would your lyrics say? Mine would say that I'm a 4'11", first-generation Haitian, jam-packed with a love for social justice, traveling and trying new foods, that I'm deeply passionate about kingdom work and developing marginalized communities, that who I am cannot fit in this small frame, and that my personality drives me to constantly be in community with others. What do you want to leave here? You will compose your own song yourself. I have composed one, so that when others come onto this campus, they are also able to live through it. This place still resonates with the echoes of those that have come before us. Do you hear it? Do you hear the echoes of those that have come? God has built this beautiful universe that sadly does not operate on Spotify, Apple Music, or even Pandora, but he has changed it to a specific station that operates on his own voice, the best composer of all time. Gordon College, each one of you will discover your own song, and each will be unique to who you are. For we all represent a note on God's music staff. And when played together, we create a beautiful symphony.
Thank you, Isleen. Now I just kind of want to sing My Jesus, I Love Thee, but I'll spare you all that. Next up is a dear friend of mine, Robert Mck. I've known him since my freshman year of high school. And as I think he's about to demonstrate to you all, he's a deeply knowledgeable man about a lot of different things. Robert Mck.
One classic nightmare of anybody who's done a performing art goes a little something like this. So you're backstage, let's say you're about to go on for your scene in a theater show. All right. And you're doing your warm-ups, you know, you're making a fool of yourself. Mama, mama, around the rough and rugged rock, the ragged rascal ran. Until you realize, I don't remember my first line. Wait, which character am I playing? Is this Shakespeare? Is this Gilbert and Sullivan? Where am I? And then with 3 minutes left to go, somebody hands you a script, and you go, okay, good. All right, maybe it's a big block of text, but I bet I could get it. Oh, wait, okay, I can do this. 45 seconds left to go, you realize, I'm in my pajamas. Now, folks, there's only one thing left to be done at this point, and that is improvise. Now, if you just found yourself in the situation that I just described, I'm sorry, I really can't help you, that's pretty rough. But improvisation, or the act of doing something that you have not planned using whatever you find, is more than what you might see on Whose Line Is It Anyway, or something like what you might hear in jazz. I think it's actually a worldview that you can apply to any domain of your life, and it's something that you can use to be more effective in your various roles, and even be a better servant to God's kingdom. All right, so I think that improvisation improves your thinking in 3 major ways. First of all, it makes you more positive, which allows you to be more creative, which translates to a greater readiness for what's to come in life. So when I say positivity, do I mean like this emoji boy up here, like everything is awesome, right? You've seen the Lego movie? Okay. Not necessarily. More a confidence and an openness. So a confidence meaning that you know that the solution that you need exists, and you know that you're the one with the wherewithal to find it. My own story with improvisation actually begins when I played drums in Gordon College Jazz Ensemble. Now, I didn't always know how I was going to get from the top left of this page to the bottom right of that page, but it always seemed to work out. This seemed to flow. Even the drum fill in bar 67, that was in a really kind of scary place, like drum solo, you know. It always worked out in the end. It's a confidence. It's also an openness to those around you. So any like sweaty tooth people here? It's our improv comedy group on campus. What's the first rule of improv comedy? Anybody knows? Yes and? Yes and? That's right. So yes and, let's say Greg at your business meeting says, you know, oh yeah, I've got this great idea for like a video dating site. And you're like, yes and? We're never going to do that, Greg. I brought the donuts so I wouldn't have to listen to your ideas, man. Come on. Well, maybe there's something salvageable in that idea. Maybe you should say, well, yes, and tell me more about how this might look. YouTube actually started off that way. There are perfectly salvageable things in some terrible ideas. Now, one epic salvaging of a terrible situation that happened recently was Nathan Chen at the last Olympics fell several times in his final round, basically ruling him out for a podium spot altogether. But he then went on, he just thought, well, might as well, went on to complete 6 quad jumps. I can't do it, but like spin around 4 times. It's amazing. Never done before in competitive figure skating. Took a terrible situation and made it into something awesome, something that rose the bar. And he won the world championship next year, so it's like, whatever, he was fine. So once you're more confident and more open to what may come, you're ready to be more creative. Now, what do we mean when we say creativity? This is sort of an abstract mental space, right? It's tough to define. But for example, in jazz music, I would say, I guarantee you are never going to hear the same thing twice. Let me rephrase that. You might not hear the same idea in the same context all the time. So, for example, what we just heard there, right, something like that, a lot of the time you heard it in a minor key there, so it was maybe something kind of melancholy-ish. Like that, right? But it can also be a very, very happy sort of melody. Or you could do something a little more wacky with it, maybe something like a... Now it sounds almost like one of those get ready to have your mind blown at the IMAX kind of things, right? Same idea, different context, totally different results. And our very own Dr. Bird, who everybody here adores, once said, true improvisation has nothing really to do with making stuff up on the spot. Rather, it is the creative and inspired weaving together of previously rehearsed material. One of my favorite examples of this concept comes from my own field of study here at Gordon College, physics. But first, Mozart. So, one thing that people forget about a lot of the great classical musicians is that they were amazing improvisers. This guy wrote the overture to Don Giovanni the day before the opera premiered. Anybody relate, like, I haven't started my research paper yet, and it's like due in 3 hours? Or even stories of, for example, he was at a party and somebody put sheet music in front of him with intentional errors intending to embarrass him, and he corrected the errors as he went along because he was dope. He was amazing. He inspired one of the greatest physicists of all time, you probably all recognize, Albert Einstein. Einstein said that Mozart's music was so perfect it's almost as if it had always existed. It was waiting in the universe to be discovered by the master. And Einstein himself would go to the piano and play while he was working on his physics theories to help inspire him to see the universe in new ways. He in turn inspired one of my favorite jazz musicians and one of the gentlemen you saw playing the lick earlier, John Coltrane. But first of all, if we focus on the smarty pants in the middle for a second, and thanks to Facebook, the author of every dumb quote you have ever read. So he had just come off... Yeah, it's great, right? He had just come off of publishing a groundbreaking paper in 1905 on special relativity. This relied on the idea that light is a wave. And the people have known this since 1865. We know that light is a wave. It has an energy which is associated with its wavelength. So, right, ultraviolet light, short wavelength, lots of energy, can give you skin cancer if you're exposed to too much of it. Red light, longer wavelength, lower energy, the exit sign, not going to hurt you at all. So this was all fine and good, until the same year he had to explain some data that somebody had collected years earlier for something called the photoelectric effect. The basic idea is you shine light on a piece of metal and electrons fly off. So you're basically pummeling the metal with all this light, and then some electrons get scattered off as a result. Simple enough experiment. The only catch was that it didn't matter how intense the light was. So let's say you shone extremely intense, really, really, really bright red light on it. No electrons would fly off. If you shone even a little bit of ultraviolet light on it, then electrons would start to fly off. It's like, what's going on here? So Einstein thought pretty originally about this. He said it almost looks like it's a stream of particles. So shining super intense red light on the metal is like throwing 40 baseballs at a window, but they're all moving at 1 mile an hour. Probably nothing's really going to happen. On the other hand, if you shine even just a little ultraviolet light, maybe 2 baseballs going at 40 miles an hour, now the window's going to break. Same ideas, new context, world-changing results. Modern technology wouldn't be the same without this explanation of this phenomenon. It actually is the only Nobel Prize that Einstein won during his lifetime. So in turn, John Coltrane was inspired by Einstein's theory of general relativity, which explains gravity in terms of geometry. So why do we move towards Earth? Why do we fall towards the Earth? Because Earth curves space around it in such a way that we go that way. John Coltrane took what he could understand of this geometry and applied it to musical cycles. So he would say, write all the notes in the chromatic scale in a certain figure, and he would draw shapes on the inside of that figure to try and guide where his chord progressions might lead next. And that led him to some pretty interesting places, like it's just a very new way of thinking about harmony. If you listen to Giant Steps, the album that's off of, you'll know exactly what I mean. Stuff that nobody had ever heard before. So, how does this actually prepare you for life? I kind of promised an application here, right? Well, this is where the idea of Feynman path integrals come in as a metaphor for life. How pretentious does that sound? Please, just hear me out for a sec. So if you consider the motion of a particle, let's say a cough drop, which is what I have in my pocket, so improvise. If I throw this up in the air, how many people think it's going to take the path on the left? Anybody? Audience participation? Who thinks it's going to take the path on the right? Couple rebels? People are good. Exactly. But why? Why didn't it take the path on the right? For that matter, why didn't it hop out of my hand, run out the door, circle the observable universe 5 times, and then come and fall on the floor? Well, it just turns out it's too costly in terms of energy, right? It's just the simplest motion for the cough drop to just simply arc and then fall down. But using a technique, a mathematical technique called a path integral, you can actually calculate what every possible path of motion of the cough drop would look like, and then figure out the most efficient path, the one that it's actually going to take. And I think that this is, well, first of all, there's a great cosmologist and jazz saxophonist called Stefan Harris. He wrote a book called The Jazz of Physics, which is basically my jam, as you might guess. But he says that a saxophone solo, or any solo, is a lot like this. So you have a certain set of chord changes, and you can take a lot of different paths over those chord changes. You just have to find one that works, that's going to be effective. And you don't know exactly what the path is going to look like right when you start out, but you just start, and it's going to be okay. You're going to figure it out. I think that this is actually a lot like life, and a lot like the way God calls us to do different things. So when God called Abram out of Ur, he said, "Go to a land that I will show you." When he called Moses to go in front of Pharaoh and say, "Let my people go," and Moses is like, "Yeah, but I'm not good at the talking to people thing." God said, "I gave you the capability to speak. I'll give you the words to say. Just go on up and do it." Now, Jonah took the path that ran away from God, as a lot of us from Sunday school might remember, because he wasn't ready to, you might say, improvise, to consider a different worldview, that the Ninevites might repent and that he might have to love them. Heard the great speech on compassion earlier, you know, it's that sort of thing. But improvisation frees us up to be able to take those maybe strange paths, maybe like when I started on a physics major at the beginning of my sophomore year. Don't do that, that's really not a smart move academically. When I hadn't done math in like 3 years, right? But I thought, I'm interested in this. I think I want to go for it. One of the best decisions of my entire life. So if all the world is a stage, and we're all the players, I would submit to you that we're all jazz musicians, even if all we know how to play is. So, let's trust in the process, let's trust in the Lord, and let's make some music. Thank you.
Weren't those some awesome speeches we got to hear? Let's give all our speakers another round of applause. Our judges are going to leave now to confer, but Arwen has a few things to share with you guys.
So the 3 judges will be judging our competitors tonight, but we do have one final judge, which is all of you. We have a People's Choice Award to give away tonight, and there should be some numbers to text coming up on the screen. So you're going to text this code on the side to 22333, whichever speech was your favorite. And so you'll have a minute or two to do that, and then shortly we'll be having another speaker come up. She was involved in JUD Talks last year, and she was actually the winner of first place and People's Choice Awards. So we'll give you a minute, but soon we'll have Sarah Petrillo coming up to talk to us.
So, as you can tell, the competition portion of our evening is over. And now you get to listen to a 7th speech. And I was a little bit worried about this, thinking, no one's going to listen, no one's going to want to listen to a 7th speech. But my Brazilian goddess of a friend, Ariel over here, told me they're going to have to listen to a 7th speech anyway, so why not let it be you? They're going to love it. So, thanks. So my confidence is building a little bit, but still waning, and I talked to Dr. Gardner, and she says, "Hey, are you still going to do this?" And I'm thinking, I think people are going to be bored, and so we kind of move on, but I start telling her about this project that I'm doing, where I go on a lot of dates. And she said, "Well, that's what you're going to talk about." So hi, my name is Sarah, and I love boys. I always have. Preschool, it was Julian Velasco. We were what you might call the perfect preschool pair. We were on the swings together, we shared orange slices, and we got along with each other's parents. I'm not really sure how that relationship ended, but it must have, because by kindergarten, I was on to Dylan Supplee. And there's still this picture in my living room where I'm holding his shoulders and going, And I'm sure I had some small crushes along the way here and there, but the next big one was the 4th grade Harry Sowers. He's happily married now, but whatever. I like him all year, and I work up the courage by the end of the year. I go up to him and I say, Harry, I like you. Do you like me? He goes, yeah. But being 8 years old and having no one ever tell me anything about relationships and not knowing how to proceed from this point, I stopped talking to him. And again, little crushes here and there, whatever. I go through middle school. Middle school sucks. And then I'm in the 9th grade, and I meet Nicholas. And Nicholas and I are in English class together, and he sits next to me, and he's super cute. We both play basketball. But you know what? I just liked where we were at. And then he decides that he needs to profess his love to me. And I still didn't know anything about relationships, so I just told him I didn't like him. And he's like, oh, okay. And I was like, don't feel bad. We're still friends. Yeah, this is still great. And he was like, oh, okay, yeah. But then every month from that point on, he would say, Sarah, I just can't get over you. And so eventually I was like, okay, we can try this. It's fine. But still at this point, no one had ever talked to me about how to have a good relationship. And so the only things I had to go off of were what I had heard from the administration and my teachers in high school. So I went to a high school called Baptist High. And if that tells you anything, I was very immersed in what is known as purity culture. Now, the 3 takeaways I got from purity culture is 1, sex before marriage, bad. 2, modesty, good. 3, there is a perfect pathway, a perfect plan that you can follow to get from single to married. So, let's go over those. 1, sex before marriage is bad, which, okay, but that ideology goes and spurs off into these other ideologies that say you should never put yourself in a situation where you could possibly even fathom having sex. So, I was not allowed to hug the boys in my class. You could not be alone with a boy because, God forbid, you stare at each other, you will hold hands, make out, and have sex. Modesty. Now, when they told us no boobs, no butt, no belly, ladies should be showing also that inch above my knee, very sensual. Don't let it show. I never really thought that a boy was going to grab me and kiss me or do anything sexual, so I started getting this ideology in my head that, well, just the fact that they think I'm attractive, just the fact that there's any sexual desire in someone's mind is a sin. And then this perfect pathway. This perfect pathway is girl. Girl does not think about boys. Girl thinks about herself. Girl thinks about her studies. Girl thinks about God, and she lives her life until she is one day magically mature. Boy. Boy also lives his life and becomes magically mature, and one day he sees girl and goes, wow, that girl is so godly, let's get married. And so he says, girl, I love you, and girl says, well, I don't look at boys, I don't love you. And he goes, but I love you. And she goes, but I don't. And he goes, but I love you. And one day she goes, wow, he loves me. I must love him too. The two start dating, they eventually get engaged, and they get married. So here's this perfect picture. But in case you weren't paying attention, that's what happened to me. And that relationship was terrible. And so I come into college with a lot of baggage. And throughout high school, I had my guy friends, and there was some weirdness, but it started to get a lot worse here. And it's so hard for me to be friends with guys because I'm always worried about, do they think that I like them? Or do they like me? Or I could possibly start liking them, because with that comes a whole host of problems, because if I like them, if I like a boy, well, I can't talk to him because now that's flirting and I'm initiating the relationship, and that's against the perfect pathway. And if they start liking me, or if they think I like them and something happens, I am now obligated to like them. I never really felt like I had a choice in the matter. If a guy starts talking to me, then I start talking to him. And if he asks me on a date, then I go on a date. And I would go through my relationships like this, feeling like relationships were a grit your teeth, grin and bear it kind of thing. And it was just something I had to do. And so those are my issues. And people here, whether they grew up in the same culture or not, bring their own issues to the table, and we have a dating crisis, friends. So maybe that's a bit extreme, but there is just so much pressure here around dating because there is this idea that I need to be in a place where I am ready to be married before I start dating. There's this idea that we go on one date and we're on this path to marriage, and so then there's so much pressure and it's hard to get to know someone and you have to size them up, or maybe you're just friends first and you get really close to someone and then you have to profess your love, and it's a lot. And then for me and for other people, there's a lot of fear around it because you get in a relationship and it's not, I'm enjoying myself, we're having fun, we're getting to know each other, it's like me fighting against temptation. And so, I was driving home for Thanksgiving with my friend Richard, and I said, Richard, I don't think I'm going to start dating anyone until I'm 27. Because, at that point, I guess I'll have graduated, I'll have another degree, I'll be settled, and in my mind, I don't want to start dating anyone unless I'm really close to being able to be married, because, there is that sense for me of, I am going to have to fight this temptation, and there's just a whole host of problems that come with this. There's this, if desire is wrong and then it's right and good and holy and commanded when I'm married, a lot of people have trouble making that flip in their life, and they have a lot of problems in their marriage. And here we are stifled. One day I looked around and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm friends with Andrew Turnbull and that's my only male friend. And, I think that's a problem. That's not living in community. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, I want to do something about this. I want to change something, but what do I do? What do I do? And so I'm home for spring break, and I'm sitting on the couch, and I'm brainstorming, and this idea hits me, and then my dad walks in the door, and I say, Dad, come here. I have an idea. So freshman year, I was in this entrepreneurial class, and in that class, our teacher told us that you guys are in this golden time in your lives, because as college students, you can get an interview with anybody. You can get a tour of any professional building, because as soon as you say, I'm a college student working on a project, people's guards just go right down. And they think, oh my gosh, I would love to help you, come on in. And so I decided, and I told my dad, Dad, what if I went up to boys and I said, hey, I'm working on a project. Will you go on a date with me? Let me tell you, it's been working. It's been working, friends. So here we are. We're going to try it out. Not Paul. Excuse me, Paul. Hey, Cooper, I'm doing a project. This is not serious. We can just have a fun time. I can get to know you. You have really cool hair. You want to go on a date with me?
I love you, Sarah Petrillo.
All right. I think that was a no. But it has worked the other 6 times. So, I guess all I'm trying to say is that there doesn't need to be so much pressure around dating, and we can just go have fun. We can get to know people, and we can get to know ourselves, and just yeah, I've been going on some dates. It's been a fun time. Happy Thursday.
Thank you, Sarah. That was a lot of fun. I think our judges have conferred. One moment.
Wonderful. Thank you all for voting. I know we had some technical difficulties, but we are all set. So we have the results. And in third place,
we have Whistleen Augustine. And and in second place, we have
Amori Gutierrez. And in first place, we have
Aidan Conant.
And your winner for People's Choice Award goes to Robert Mck. Awesome. Thank you all for coming. We'll have dessert out in the lobby, and please stick around to congratulate your contestants.
Have a great night.